Okay, here we are with the Youth Companion magazine of 1895, and we're going to bring to you a couple of the current events for the year 1895, and this is in November. So we're going to bring you the race question and a royal falling out. They'll be read to you by Jennifer.
The race question. The South Carolina Constitutional Convention has voted to strike out the section in the Declaration of Rights which said that the right of citizens of the state to vote shall not be denied or abridged on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. It also struck out the section saying that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been once convicted, shall exist in this state. These principles, however, are embedded in the federal Constitution.
All right. And now, a royal falling out.
There has been a misunderstanding between King Carlos of Portugal and King Humbert of Italy, which has caused a suspension of diplomatic relations between the two countries. King Carlos explained that he could not make a visit to King Humbert, as he had proposed, without incurring the displeasure of the Pope and causing the recall of the papal nuncio. Thereupon, the Italian representative at the Portuguese court politely replied that he hoped Portugal would acquire independence in her policy. The recent celebration of Italian unity was not pleasing to the Pope.
Wow. All right, here's a couple of stories. I just saw this. Look, ideal machine for $5. Isn't that something?
Oh, it's a sewing machine.
Can you imagine that?
Guaranteed to sew as well as any high-priced machine. Adjustable treadle. Gives girls pleasure and teaches industry. A charming Christmas gift for mother, wife, sister, child, or servant. Delivered to any express company in Chicago for $5.
Wow. $5.
Imagine getting that as a gift.
Yeah.
Oh, here you go. Work for me.
Well, I also went to the servants, too. It's neat sometimes to look at some of the commercials and everything. This one here has got some free pins.
Send your address on a postal and we will mail you free enough Puritan pins and a booklet about them to forever convince you that they are the only pins that don't bend.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. What do we got down here?
Sweet Home Soap.
Why is there furniture?
You can have your choice. A whatever that is, rocker and reclining chair, a desk, or an oil heater free, with a combination box for $10. Are you kidding me? You buy a box of soap and you get a chair or a heater or a desk? Really?
I don't know. Get both.
The combination box at retail would cost $10, and the either premium ditto is $10, so the total would be $20. And you would end up getting both for only $10. We will send a box in either premium or 30 days trial. If satisfactory, you can remit $10. If not, hold. Goods subject in order.
For $10? God, can we go shopping back there and come back here and bring it all back? That would be neat. Wow. Look at that tea and coffee pots. That's pretty. That's kind of neat.
Chickering
like
pianos. They chicker.
They chicker. Oh,
Chickering.
Chickering pianos. Free hook eye. Wow.
Free hooks and eyes. Oh, there's that tooth powder again.
Yeah, yeah.
Man's green bean bone cutter.
Where do you see that? Oh.
A lot of eggs. The hens lay when fed on green cut bone. What?
I don't know.
I'm confused. What?
Green cut bone. Must have been the brand.
It was sent on trial though, so this was like a trial thing. Here, let's try this. And
$5 boy ones.
$5
one.
buy ones, yeah.
Yeah. Huh. Unreal.
And a new perfume, Vile Violet.
Violet. Wow. For $1.75 per bottle. God. We like the prices. We like the advertising.
I don't know if I like the stuff though. It seems kind of dangerous. I don't know.
Well, yeah, when you read the toothpaste commercial and stuff like we did on the other one and stuff, but yeah, but to have the furniture and everything, come on, a recliner. That's all pretty cool. Some pretty good stuff here. Wow.
$1 gloves.
Yeah, $1. Well, $1 gloves, 57 cents, 67 cents. Look at that, 57 cents. It's got buttons in it. Cool. Yeah.
Fig syrup.
Yeah. All right. Well, stay tuned for more. We'll bring you whatever we see. Alrighty. Bye-bye now. Okay, here we are with the Used Companion magazine, November 14th of 1895. And we're going to bring you a few stories of nature and science. Okay, naming colors will be the first story that we read to you. And then we're going to the deepest sea. So, there we go. Be read to you by Jennifer.
Mr. Herbert Spencer has lately published an extract from his autobiography, a work which he says is already in print, but is not to be published until after his death. The difficulty and confusion in naming tints and shades led him to write a suggestion which a newspaper correspondence on the subject now induces him to take from that autobiography. He proposes that the tints shall be named on the principle of boxing the compass, and to illustrate it he gives a partial list of shades, thus red, red by blue, red, red, blue, red, blue by red, red, blue by blue, and so forth. The same system is suggested for the shades from blue to yellow and from yellow to red. It sounds a little fanciful, but Herbert Spencer's ideas are not to be rejected simply because they are novel and strike one at first as grotesque. The deepest sea. Heretofore, the deepest sounding of the ocean has been 4,655 fathoms, near Japan. But the surveying ship Penguin, sent out by the British government, has found a deeper spot. The sounding wire broke a 4,900 fathoms when bottom had not been reached. This new deepest depression in the Earth's crust lies exactly south of the Tonga or Friendly Isles and almost on the Tropic of Capricorn.
All right. Well, at least the first story with colors and everything was really kind of ended up being true after all these years, because you got turquoise and everything, which is the combination of blue and green, but you got a lot of colors there that are all mixed together. So back then they just looked at the basic colors, I guess, but now everything's all blended to make their own colors. So stay tuned for more stories and we'll bring them to you as we read them. Bye-bye. Okay, here we are with the Used Companion magazine, November 14th of 1895. And we're going to read to you Johnny's Stilts. And while we do that, I'll leave you with this picture right here that just says Doll Times. Okay, and the story will be read to you by Jennifer. Johnny's Stilts.
"Just look at that boy," exclaimed Grandma Peters, with a contemptuous sniff, dropping her knitting in her lap, and peering out the window at Johnny. who was painfully stalking about the yard on stilts. "What's the sense of walking on them things when it would be a sight easier to walk on the ground? It's perfectly ridiculous," and her knitting needles flew faster than before to make up for lost time. Mamma looked out the window, too, and laughed good-naturedly. "It does look rather useless, doesn't it, Grandma? But I guess boys always have a time of walking on stilts, and it's very innocent sort of fun if they don't get hurt." Grandma gave another little sniff. "Boys are queer," she said. Johnny kept on practicing every day till in a short time he could go quite fast, while Grandma would look out now and then and say how foolish it was. One day it rained and rained from morning till night, and Johnny had to stay in the house because his everyday shoes leaked so badly, and Mamma said it was too cold to go barefoot. Just before supper time, Mamma discovered that the tea caddy was quite empty, and what was to be done? For how could Grandma get along without her cup of tea? "I'll go after it, Mamma," said Johnny. "But you'll get your feet so wet," said Mamma. "How? I won't get my feet wet," Johnny cried. And running out into the shed, he got his stilts and was soon stalking off into the wet grass. So Grandma had her cup of tea the same as ever, and after that she didn't say anything more about the stilts.
All right, there you go. There, he got so used to it and everything. He was a good practice, so he could do things with it.
And proved him wrong.
Yeah, proved them wrong and stuff, and she got her tea, and that's what matters. All right, stay tuned for more. We'll bring you some more. Bye-bye now. Okay, here we are with the Youth Companion magazine, and we have a few short stories here to read to you. So we're going to read to you all of them in one group. This is 1895 from the Youth Companion magazine, and the first story is Undoubtedly. The second story is Knew How It Would Be. The third story, A Difficult Requirement. And the fourth one, Cruel Examiners. So it will be read to you by Jennifer. Here you go.
Undoubtedly. The people of Holland are commonly as matter-of-fact as the Scotch, and a figurative phrase bothers them sorely. Not long ago, an American traveler found in a cafe at Amsterdam a Dutchman who had traveled much and who spoke English perfectly well. The Dutchman was smoking a china pipe of remarkable size and beauty, and the American, as an admirer and collector of such bric-a-brac, took the liberty to comment upon it. "You could not stumble upon a pipe like that every day," said the American. The Dutchman took 3 or 4 whiffs at the pipe, and then slowly removed it from his mouth. "Certainly not without breaking it," he said gravely.
Okay.
Knew how it would be. The simplicity of children is sometimes hard to fathom. In the following case, for instance, reported by an exchange, was the boy's innocence real or affected? He had brought home his monthly school report, which made a poor showing. "This is very unsatisfactory," said his father, as he looked it over. "I am not at all pleased with it." "I knew you wouldn't be," answered the little boy. "I told the teacher so, but she said she couldn't change it." That's cute. That's very, very cute.
I know. You have to be little to get away with that one.
A difficult requirement. The curious effect that may be produced by a very small transposition of words and ideas is illustrated by the slightly mixed instruction recently given by an officer at drill to a company of men. "When I give the command, 'Halt,' you will bring the foot which is on the ground to the side of the one which is in the air and remain motionless."
What? In other words, you can't do that. if you have to bring the one that's on the ground to the one that's in the air, you're gonna fall on your buns.
I said a difficult requirement.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Yeah, right.
Sit on your butt. I don't know. Cruel examiners. A reporter from the Cincinnati Tribune lately overheard a dialogue between two suburban gentlemen. "How did your daughter pass her examination for a position as a teacher?" asked the first man. "Pass," was the answer. "She didn't pass at all. Maybe you won't believe it, but they asked that the poor girl about things that happened before she was born." "I don't see," said Mr. McGuire, as he sat in the stern of the vessel, "how the captain can find his way across the ocean. If he were going to the other way now, all he'd have to do would be to follow that white streak behind there, but in front there's nothing to point the way. A horse will push and pull with all his might, but never with his mane."
Okay.
Those are two just little weird things after that. I don't know. It's very weird.
Okay, if you make sense of it, be sure to leave a comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say about some of these stories that we read and everything.
The girl was
stay
trying to
tuned
be
for more.
Girl was trying to be a teacher.
Bye-bye now. Okay, we just had a really nice story, which was really good. So we're hoping that this magazine continues giving us some really funny ones and stuff. This is 123 years ago and stuff, the Youth Companion magazine. So this time we're going to read to you the male dog. Male as in mailman dog.
I would have got that, you know.
I know. Well, I had to kind of make it clear, you know, because it's M-A-I-L. All right, it'll be read to you by Jennifer. Go ahead, Jen.
The little daughter of a United States mail inspector tells of a favorite dog, a fox terrier, that seems to have been foreordained to travel in a postal car and sit on piles of mailbags. His name is Oni, probably because nobody owns him, and his own home is on the mail trains and in the post office anywhere along the line of the Boston and Albany and the New London Northern Railroad. He keeps watch of the mailbags, and at whichever of the great termini of the roads he happens to be, he rides with the boys from the cars to the office and from the office to the cars. This is his business. During his 4 years of life, he has never done anything other. Any idea of the kind of dog Oni is may be gathered from this specimen incident. One night in Albany, after the unloading of the mail car, he started to ride as usual on the bags in the wagon. But when the post office was reached, he was not on board. This was strange, for no temptation had ever been strong enough to lure him off his post. The sacks were delivered, and as the men called them over, one was found to be missing. The wagon driver hurried back to look along the streets. After searching over a good part of his route, he caught sight of Oni in the gutter, wagging his stump of a tail and sneezing in his queer way to be recognized. The lost mailbag was there, and he was sitting on it. The Treasury Department seal of fidelity is the picture of an iron safe and a watchdog with his paw on the key. Somewhere in that post office, the department, there ought to be a picture of Oni sitting on a mailbag.
Aw, that was nice. Isn't that something? What a faithful dog. He really took his job very seriously.
Well, he didn't
and
leave his
at heart,
post.
He never
It fell
left
off.
his post, right. He stayed with it. And that's 123 years ago to have such a faithful dog that really nobody owned. Very nice. All right, be sure to share these beautiful stories with friends and family. And be sure to sub me, join me as a friend, and we'll bring you some more. Bye-bye. Okay, we're going to read to you On a Buffalo from the Youth Companion magazine of 123 years ago. This will be read to you by Jennifer. On a Buffalo.
The Chicago Tribune prints an exciting story purporting to come from a Nebraska stockman. He had been out on a buffalo hunt and was returning along with the hind quarters of a bull on his shoulder, when he ran into the herd again and almost before he knew it found himself surrounded. His dodging in and out seemed in danger of causing a stampede, and he knew that if such an event took place, he would inevitably be trampled to death. There was no time for consideration, and I determined upon a bold stroke. I edged up to a shaggy young bull, grabbed the long hair on his fore shoulder, and swung myself on his back. The bellow which followed made me wish I had been less venturesome. It was taken up by the entire herd, and soon we were flying along at a fearful rate over gulches and uphill and down. I was blinded by the sand, but with eyes closed hung on for dear life. For half an hour or more the pace was kept up. My legs seemed crushed almost to jelly, and I began to think my hour had come. I was so weak that I could hardly keep my seat. A few minutes more and I should certainly have fallen off. But just then I succeeded in partially clearing my eyes, and discovered that we were running parallel with the railroad track. The bank was high and steep, and if I could reach it, I should be safe. By good luck, the beast I was riding was closest to the track. I pulled myself together as best I could and prepared for a spring. It was made at just the right moment, for the motion of the bull's body sent me flying halfway up the embankment, and I was safe in the sand. For 5 weeks afterward, I was confined to my bed.
Wow. I guess he was lucky to even be alive after that. I would never want to be in that situation. I don't think any of you guys would either. So stay tuned for more, and we'll bring you some more of these stories. Bye-bye now. Okay, this story is On the Bride's Arm. And this is a story from 123 years ago from the Youth Companion magazine. So here we go, read to you by Jennifer.
Mrs. Gregg had one of the prettiest weddings that ever took place in the Massachusetts town in which she lives. But there was one odd incident of the occasion which a few of her friends, who are in the secret, recall with much amusement. Although a lady of quite taste, Mrs. Gregg wore something with certainly no bride ever wore before. Her wedding present from her old friend Dr. Jameson was an exquisite affair of lace, embroidery, and white satin ribbon, which he had brought from Paris. It came just as the wedding party were starting for the church. "What a lovely bag!" exclaimed the bride. "I am going to wear it. That will please dear Dr. Jameson," and slipping the white satin strings over her arm, she thought no more of it until after the ceremony. "That is a beautiful bag, and so odd. I never saw a bag like it." "The material is beautiful," commented some of her friends. "I suppose the style is new," replied Mrs. Gregg. "Dr. Jameson brought it to me from Paris. I am delighted with it." "Did you put anything in it?" asked Dr. Jameson, who had been listening to the conversation with a smile that was suspiciously near a laugh. "No," replied Mrs. Gregg. "I'll put my handkerchief in it." "What? Why? Why, there's no bottom in it. What is it, Dr. Jameson?" "Well," replied Dr. Jameson, "I bought it for a lampshade, and it was a lampshade edged with lace and drawn up at the top with white satin ribbon."
Okay, now isn't that just adorable? That's just a beautiful story.
That's her wedding, man.
I know, that was her wedding. She will never forget that one, or never did forget that one, since it was 123 years ago.
Well, it's forgotten now.
That is cute. It's not forgotten because we just told the story. So it's staying in history. I hope you enjoyed that. Be sure to share this one with anyone who has a good sense of humor. All right? Bye-bye now. All right. This is from the Youth Companion magazine 123 years ago. And this story is Faithful Toby, a story of kindness repaid.
He followed Tom home one day. When they got to the house, he cried so hard at being shut out that Mother said he could come in. She gave him a dish of milk and a nice warm corner in the kitchen. Tabby was the only member of the household who did not like the newcomer, but as Toby grew larger, they became friendly. He soon did the marketing and was generally useful about the place. One night, Toby discovered that the house was on fire and by his prompt and sagacious action, averted a terrible disaster.
Aw, now that's loyalty. All right, be sure to join me as a friend, and we'll be loyally bringing you more stories. Bye-bye. Okay, here we are with the Youth Companion magazine 123 years ago, and we're going to read to you The Plate of Gold, read to you by Jennifer.
One day there fell in Great Benares temple court a wondrous plate of gold, whereon these words were writ: To him who loveth best, a gift from heaven. The priest made proclamation, at the midday hour, each day let those assemble who for virtue deem their right to heaven's gift the best. And we will hear the deeds of mercy done and so adjudged. The news ran swift as light, and soon from every quarter came nobles and munches, hermits, scholars, holy men, and all renowned for gracious or for splendid deeds. Meanwhile, the priests in solemn council sat, and heard what each had done to merit best of the gift of heaven. So for a year the claimants came and went. At last, after a patient weighing of the worth of all, the priest bestowed the plate of gold on one who seemed the largest lover of the race, whose whole estate within the year had parted bed among the poor. This man, all trembling with his joy, advanced to take the golden plate, when lo, at his first finger touch the golden plate, when lo, oops.
Read that one twice?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Just continue.
Anyways, okay. At his first finger touch, it changed to basest lead. I guess I didn't want you to know what it was going to change to.
Ah.
All stood aghast, but when the hapless claimant dropped it, changing on the floor, heaven's guardian was again transformed to shining gold. So for another 12th month sat the priest and judged. Thrice they awarded, thrice did heaven refuse the gift. Meanwhile, a host of poor maimed beggars in the street lay all about the temple gate, in hope to move that love whereby each claimant hoped to win the gift. And well for them it was, if gold be charity, for every pilgrim to the temple gate praised God that love might thus approve itself before the test. And so the coins rained freely in the outstretched hands. But none of those who gave so much as turned to look into the poor sad eyes of them that begged. And now the second year had almost passed, but still the plate of gold, by whomsoever touched, was turned to lead. At length there came a simple peasant, not aware of that strange contest for the gift of God, to pay a vow within the temple. As he passed along the line of the shriveled beggars, all his soul was moved within him to sweet pity, and the tears welled up and trembled in his eyes. Now by the temple gate there lay a poor sore creature, blind and shunned by all. But when the peasant came and saw the sightless face and trembling, festered hands, he could not pass, but knelt, and took both palms in his hands, and softly said, O thou my brother, bear thy trouble bravely, God is good. Then he arose and walked straight away, crossed the court, and entered where they wrangled of their deeds of love before the priest. A while he listened sadly, then had turned away, but something moved the priest who held the plate of gold to beckon to the peasant. So he came, not understanding, and obeyed, and stretched his hand and took this sacred vessel. Lo, it shone with thrice its former lustre, and amazed them all. Son, cried the priest, rejoice, the gift of God is thine. Thou lovest best. And all made answer, It is well, and one by one departed. But the peasant knelt and prayed, bowing his head above the golden plate, while o'er his soul like morning streamed the love of God.
Oh, that was lovely. A very, very, very nice story. The Plate of Gold. Okay, here we have another story. It's called How Doll. And this is from 123 years ago from the Youth Companion magazine. Read to you by Jennifer.
Elsie Holt sat in a hammock which was hung in the porch of her father's country house. The afternoon was warm. The shadows of the clouds drifted lazily over the fields. Elsie's bright face wore an expression of discontent, for the dressmaker had failed to send home her new gown, and the last pages were missing in the soiled paper novel which she held. She yawned drearily. How tiresome and dull the world is, she said. Overhead a pair of birds were twittering near their nest. They had just come from the far south. The story of their lives, their habitats, their wanderings, their enemies, was more curious than any novel ever written. Elsie knew nothing of it. Their calls, their love songs, their cry of warning, their lullabies over their young had no more meaning to her than the rattle of dry sticks together. The woods were full of these marvelous winged creatures, each with its history, which she might have read. She was blind to them all. Close at hand grew countless great trees, each of which had its own life. There was not a weed or a blade of grass which had not some peculiar wonderful fact to tell, of interest and strange significance. To Elsie they were dumb. Below the grass the great earth lay, with mystic meanings written on each stratum of clay and rock. The meanings were plain, so that he who ran might read. Elsie did not know one letter of their alphabet. A common plant grew below the hammock. Her foot crushed it as she swung to and fro. There was a powerful microscope in the house. If she had examined the plant through it, she would have seen upon each leaf a fairy forest of plumly growths, and creeping through it, tiny creature with no eye had ever yet discovered, violet and red and golden. Here one shone with an emerald light, there another twinkled with opaline hues. Elsie saw only one, a dingy weed. As evening lowered, the great trees bent over her with a friendly calm. Behind the woods, the lights of the village shone. In every one of its poor houses were human lives, some of them bare, strained, crushed lives, fully of pathos and meaning, into which she could have brought hope and cheer. Overhead the stars came out, Arcturus, which brought the job its message from God, and the other distant orbs that have told to listened souls, in all ages since, the eternal truths of faith and love, but Elsie saw and heard nothing. Her new gown was not finished. The last page was lost from her cheap novel. Therefore she sighed, "How dull and tiresome this world is."
Wow. Okay. Hope you've enjoyed that story. And
It's a good lesson.
Yeah, it's a lesson for sure. All right. Enjoy what you have around you. All right. Bye-bye now. Okay, this next story is Feeding the Camels. And this is from July 23rd of 1891. Read to you by Jennifer.
The author of A Ride Through Asia Minor and Armenia has, like the Turk, a great respect for the sagacity of the camel. It is not a cheerful beast, and yet its face is so pleasant and wise in expression that it forces the human observer to respect it, not to admire. Wonderful stories are told of the animal's cleverness. All camel drivers declare that when they take off and muffle the numerous bells with which the animals are adorned in traversing a region infested by robbers, the creatures know why it is done, and step so lightly that they can pass unheard within a few yards of a concealed enemy.
Wow.
One day, writes the author, we put up in a wretched little cane, but were lucky enough to get a small upper room above the dirt and smell of the yard, and it was rather amusing to sit on the roof outside and observe the life below. The yard was crowded with camels, all wistfully watching two men, who were kneading cakes of dough that weighed about 2 pounds each, and showing their impatience by sundry grunts or by spitefully biting at each other. At last one of the men appeared with 3 or 4 of these cakes, and his 2 camels shuffled quickly after him to a comparatively quiet corner, where they knelt down in a surprising hurry and remained with their mouths wide open like young birds when the old ones are about to feed them. The man thrust a cake well back in the mouth of the first camel, and then clapped a hand on each side of its big lips to prevent it, in munching, from dropping any out sideways. This he continued doing until the camel showed that all was swallowed by opening its mouth for another cake. Then the other camel was served, and so going from one to the other until he had given each 4 cakes, the poor beasts looked as if they would have enjoyed twice that number.
Wow. Okay, so there goes the story about camels.
Oh, 2 pounds times 4. You get 8
Yeah, they didn't get enough to eat though.
pounds.
And can you imagine the rest that were in the yard, how they were feeling? All right, stay tuned for more. Bye-bye now. Okay, here we are with the Youth Companion Magazine, April 23rd of 1891. And we're going to read to you Hard to Swallow. And it'll be read to you by Jennifer.
The teller of tall stories generally finds his rebuke awaiting him in an intelligent company. On one occasion, when several physicians had met, the conversation ran to the subject of the extraordinary things which a human being might swallow and still live. The familiar stories about swallowing silver dollars, sets of false teeth, and so forth had been related when Dr. Longbow began to speak. 2 years ago, he said, I was called in great haste to attend a carpenter in my town, though the message said that the man was beyond doubt already dead, for he had, while holding a large gimlet in his mouth at his work, suddenly been taken with a fit of hiccoughs and swallowed the gimlet. But when I arrived at the man's house, I found him very comfortable. The gimlet gentleman gave him no trouble to all to digest. There was silence for a moment. Presently, one of their other doctors remarked, With you for his physician, Longbow, the man was lucky that it was only a gimlet that he undertook to swallow. What do you mean? Why, if he had tried to swallow one of your stories, it would have choked him to death.
You try to swallow one of your stories with a chicken to death.
Okay, that's a good one. Okay, there are some good storytellers. Okay, and just think, this is 123 years ago. They were having this kind of fun here. Okay, you guys take care, and be sure to sub me, join me as a friend, and we'll bring you some more. Okay, here we are with the Youth Companion magazine, and this is 123 years ago, July 23rd of 1891, and we're going to read to you this time, Lost in the Fog, and this is be read to you by Jennifer. Here you go.
Even old hunters who have roamed the plains and mountains until they are familiar with every foot of the ground are liable under peculiar circumstances to become bewildered. They are completely turned around, as the common saying is, the streams all flow the wrong way, and the sun sets in the east. As soon as the experienced hunter realizes his condition, he makes a camp, lies down, and goes to sleep. When he awakes, everything has come right around. But more troublesome than such an attack is the coming of a fog. In a few minutes, the peaks and headlands, the guides by which the traveler lays his course, are obscured and the sun is hidden. In an article contributed to The Big Game of North America, the Rev. Joshua Cook narrates his experience in a fog while hunting with his son among the mountains of Oregon. One morning, there was every indication that a fog might roll down by noon. They started for a hunt. Several deer fell to their rifles when the son came running and exclaimed, "Father, the fog is coming. We must leave the deer. The sun is hidden, and we have not a compass. Hurry." They started on a run, but had not gotten far. Before day was turned into night, and objects at 2 rods' distance were obscured, the son, a ranchman familiar with the mountains, stopped, leaned on his rifle, and said, "Father, we are in a bad fix. All depends on my keeping my head level. Please don't give me any counsel or object to anything I say or do. It will only confuse me, and then we shall be lost. I will do my best." "Before I take up silence," answered the father, "let me say this. We are now on an ascent. By keeping up it is as long as it continues. We must come to some hilltop, which is our only chance for an outlook if the fog should break a little." "It is a good thought and may save us," replied the son, leading the way up into clearer ground and then to the summit. It was barely noon, but the fog made it almost as dark as night. Even from the summit there was no outlook. "I will climb that fir. Perhaps I can see from above," said the son. He went up 60 feet, no outlook. "May I speak, my son?" "Yes, for I am all at sea." "Well, just beyond the top of the fir is the faintest show of more light than anywhere else. If so, that is the sun, and that is south, for it is noon." "Then," said the son, pointing his finger, "that is east, and there is our camp. Don't lose the direction, for I can't keep it up here." He came down and took the direction. By keeping near objects directly ahead and moving carefully from one to another, the 2 men came within an hour to a black cattle horse standing at his stake, his body dripping with the rain like mist. "Father, it's Jack," exclaimed the son, as the horse gave a faint neigh. "We are safe home. God bless you. You didn't bother me today." 2 other men of the company were lost that day in the fog, and wandered off west instead of going east. They were all out all night, and were set right by some Indians. They had to travel 40 miles to reach the cabin.
Oh my God, that must have taken them a long time. Whew. All right, so that's all about learning about being in the woods and living in the woods. So stay tuned for more, and we'll bring you some more stories. Bye-bye. Okay, here we are with the Used Companion magazine of 123 years ago, and we're going to read to you Lost Land. It'll be read to you by Jennifer.
Where did the little maid's playthings go? Childish treasures dear to her heart, dropped and forgotten, unfound, and so making perhaps the big tears start. She looks at me from her wistful eyes, with faith as deep as they are blue. They must be gone to lost land, she sighs. Sometime I'll find them, I guess, don't you? Where do our happiness go? Love and pity and faith God willed, the tender words that have moved us so, joys departed and fond hopes chilled, tears that were shed for us, smiles that shone, all the sweetest things that we knew, they have gone from us, somehow surely gone. I wonder, are they in lost land too? Dear little maid, if the faith I see in your sweet blue eyes, my only dwell in my heart with me. I think that these clouds of care would rise if old joys wait and old love endures. In the lost land shadows whither they fare, I will trust my hand, little maid, to yours. We will go together and seek them there.
Well, that's a cute, nice little poem. All right, stay tuned. Join me as a friend, and we'll bring you some more. Bye-bye now. International Hens. This is a story of 123 years ago from the Youth Companion magazine. And this will be read to you by Jennifer. International Hens. Wow. Interesting story. Here we go.
The advantages which people who live exactly on the line between two countries have in escaping the customs and other regulations of both countries have often been recounted. Probably the most picturesque and innocent instance of this kind of evasion comes from the far western town of Nogales, which lies exactly on the boundary between Mexico and Arizona. On the United States side of the line, as the town eggs have been rendered dear by the new tariff upon eggs, inasmuch as the hens in the region are chiefly owned on the Mexican side of the line and fed by the peasants on a cheap Mexican grain. Recently, according to the Tombstone prospector, a Maine Yankee arrived in Nogales with an eye to business. He was convinced that his opportunity lay in the high price of eggs. Accordingly, he put up a long henhouse exactly across the boundary line. At the American end, he provided nests, and at the other end, he regularly fed his hens with low-priced Mexican grain. The fowls ate their grain in Mexico and then walked across the line into the United States to lay their eggs. The transaction was perfectly honest, for of course the proprietor of the hennery smuggled neither grain nor eggs, but he availed himself of high prices on one side and low prices on the other.
All right, now that's what you call a smart businessman. That was cool. I like that one. That was smart thinking back then, and that's 123 years ago. We can think of things like that today. We wouldn't get away with it, but back then, hey, they did. And good luck for him. All right, stay tuned for more. We'll bring you some more stories. Bye-bye now. Okay, here we are with the Youth Companion magazine of 123 years ago. This is 1891. And we're going to read to you Smith. And they'll be read to you by Jennifer.
In Lower English surnames, there is a chapter devoted to names derived from occupations and pursuits. The use of such name is a high antiquity. Thus the Romans had among them many persons, and those too of the highest rank, who bore such names as Figulus, Pictor, Fabricius, Scribonius, Agricola, etc. answering to the potters, painters, etc. of our own daily. Preeminent in this list stands Smith, unquestionably the commonest of surnames. Verstegen asks, "From whence comes Smith, all be he knight or squire, but from the smith that forgeth at the fire." But the antiquary should have been aware that the radix of this term is the Anglo-Saxon smitten, to smite, and that it was originally applied not merely to the Cyclopean fraternity, but also the wheelwrights, carpenters, masons, and in short, to smitters in general. Among our ancestors, in fact, the word was precisely what Faber was among the Romans. Any smith, forger, hammerer, maker, or mechanical workman. Otherwise, it would be hard to account for the great frequency of the name. The prevalence of this surname, common alike to country and town, to peer and plebeian, to the old world and the new, has given rise to a host of jokes and witticisms, good, bad, and indifferent, the greater part of which are aimed at the ubiquitous binomial John Smith. "We remember," says the editor of the Literacy Gazette, "a bet laid and won that a John Smith had been condemned either to death or to transportation at every Old Bailey session for a specified term of years." John Smith is indeed so common a name that it may almost be said to be no name at all, since a name is something employed to distinguish the wearer of it from other people. What then shall be said for the countryman who directed a letter for Mr. John Smith at London with speed? A missive addressed to Prester John or the Man in the Moon would have been almost as likely to arrive at its destination. "Might your name be John Smith?" asked an inquisitive New Englander of a stranger. "Well, yes, it might," was the reply, "but it ain't by a long chalk." Mr. Lower mentions the story of a wag who arrived too late at a crowded theater and called out in a loud voice, "Mr. Smith's house is on fire," whereupon there were seats enough and to spare. He
cheated.
He cites also a statement in a late number of the Boston Post that in March last there was to have been a great meeting of Smiths on Boston Common to ascertain what branch of the family fell heir to a certain property in England, but the meeting was necessarily adjourned as the Common was found inadequate to accommodation of the numbers who were anxious to attend.
Wow. So, and then they say Smith, something bad, and you cleared the room. All right. We clear the room differently
Get the whole theater
these
to
days.
yourself.
Yeah, get the whole theater to yourself. There, bring your family. You're all set. Just say, "Hey, the house of Smith is on fire." All right, that's an interesting story. That was kind of cute, and it was nice. So stay tuned, and we'll bring you some more. Bye-bye now. Okay, this next story we're going to read to you is Striking a Light. And this is from the Youth Companion magazine 123 years ago. And Jennifer will be reading this to you.
Lieutenant A.J. Mountney Jeffson, in his book Emin Pasha and the Rebellion at the Equator, describes the sensation he made by striking a light for his pipe before the natives. He was on his way from Tunkuru, at the head of Lake Albert, to join Mr. Stanley at Cavalli's and traveled by canoe. Owing to the roughness of the lake, 4 of his soldiers often ran along the shore in order to lighten the burden of the canoe, but occasionally high cliffs forbade this, At such times, the lieutenant went ahead to the next beach and waited while some of the party went back to fetch the pedestrians. I waited for them under a tree in the middle of a village, the chief of which was a very nice fellow called Vunja. The people all came and sat around me in a circle, and we had a long talk. While I was talking, I took out my pipe and, striking a match on a stone, lit it. I never shall forget the impression it made on the natives. They gravely watched me as I took a match from my matchbox and struck it against a stone, and when there was a sputter and they saw fire, their jaws dropped and they gazed at me perfectly dumbfounded. But when they saw me light my pipe with it, they all went off into roars of laughter and slapped each other on the back. They exclaimed, "Oh, but these white men are bad people. Look at the Inkma. He has taken fire out of that stone." They took up the stone and examined it gingerly to see if there was anything unusual in it, and it was passed around the circle for each to look at. They were not content till I had let several other matches off for their edification, the sputter of each match being the signal for fresh roars of laughter and slappings on each other's backs. And even the women came to see the performance. However, matches were precious in Central Africa, so I refused to light any more, but made Vunja happy by a present of 2 wax matches, which he proceeded to wrap in several small pieces of bark cloth and lash tightly to his body. So much were they impressed by my cleverness in being able to take fire from a stone that these friendly, hospitable people killed a cow and loaded the canoes with meat for my men.
Oh, that was neat. A little naive, but that was neat. Okay, very good story. So be sure to share this with family and friends and join me and we'll bring you some more stories. Bye-bye now. Okay, here we are reading to you from the Youth Companion magazine of 123 years ago, and we're going to read to you After Vacation. And it'll be read to you by Jennifer.
The principal benefits which city people derive from a summer sojourn in the country may be said to be 4. 1. Rest of the brain. 2. A change of surroundings. 3. A change of air. 4. Life out of doors. In 3 of these respects, dwellers among the hills may secure corresponding advantages from a visit to the seashore. The vacation season has its own peculiar dangers. For some years it has been noticed by physicians that serious illness often attacks persons who have recently returned to their city homes. Typhoid fever is probably the commonest of such after-vacation diseases, and its prevalence under these circumstances is doubtless chargeable in great part to defective stewardry in country places, and especially in hastily equipped pleasure and health resorts. While the visitor is kept in vigorous condition by his life in the fresh, bracing air, the germs of the disease may be digested and so rendered harmless. Then he returns to city life in the depressing atmosphere of the coast, and the reaction affords the germs remaining in his system exactly the opportunity they need for development. Before concluding arrangements for board at any summer resort, it is of the first importance to make sure of its proper hygienic conditions and the purity of its ice supply. But the ill health which follows a return to city life after an absence in the country may arise from other causes. 1. A neglect thoroughly to flush the drains, let off the water which has been standing in the lead pipes and ventilating the house. Carelessness in these respects is very dangerous. 2. The bracing air of the hills tends strongly to induce constipation. This tendency should be guarded against by a free use of fruit, vegetables, and other suitable food. Otherwise, the system may become saturated with its own poison, and the persons may return home with worse for its outing. 3. The wholesome natural life of the vacation season, with its freedom from care, its pleasant companionship, and its out-of-door exercise, may stimulate the appetite and the digestion of twice their usual activity. This is well for the time, but it will not do for the man to keep up the same free habit of eating after his return home. For a few weeks at least he should be on his guard in this respect. Persons who are especially susceptible to change of air and surroundings, and who are therefore peculiarly liable to suffer a reaction upon returning from the country to the city, may find it advisable to take a simple tonic for a while, under the advice of a physician.
Alrighty. And what's in that tonic? Alright, it's going to clean you all out. Okay, that was a very nice story and everything about taking a nice relaxed vacation, but more about talking about all the germs, which is something you don't look at and don't think about before vacation or during vacation. You take it to have fun. Alright, stay tuned. We'll bring you some more stories. Bye-bye now. Okay, we're going to read to you a story, Kindly Done. And this is from the Youth Companion magazine from 123 years ago. This is how things were kindly done.
It was a very cold morning in the month of March in the great city of Chicago, writes a youthful contributor. A little old man stood on the corner of Clark and Randolph streets, selling newspapers. He was very thinly clad and kept trotting up and down, trying hard to keep warm. His voice was hoarse from cold, and passers-by could hardly hear him shout. Some rude boys jeered and laughed at him, but one about 13 years old, rather better dressed than the rest, after looking at him for a few moments, walked up to him and said, "Shall I shout for you?" The old man thought the boy was making fun of him and told him to be off, but the boy began to call out, "Morning News, Times, or Herald," in a clear, shrill voice which attracted so many customers that in a little while the old man had sold all his stock. He offered to divide the profits with his youthful partner, but the boy would take nothing and went off with a smiling face.
Aw, now that is kindness. That was nice. Very, very nice story. Something you don't see too much of today, but it would be very nice if we all did an act of kindness like that at least once a week to a stranger. Okay, be sure to join me and I'll bring you some more stories. Bye-bye.